To open the cylinder, put your hands like this, push off the spring with your thumbs, flip it open. You can pull off the top to access the nav pin and start maneuvering it and setting it up, or you can take off the entire cylinder. When you pull it off, pull it straight out. Don't flip it down. Absolutely not this way. It is getting a bit dark, so if we want light, we turn on the backlight here. Now we can clearly see the display even at night. To close the house, when you push the cylinder over the O-ring, rotate it a bit to prevent that the O-ring gets squeezed. And then put the spring on like that, and we're done, ready to deploy. Down on the bottom, when we screw down the holder, we put the instrument into the holder tube until it overlaps it a bit, and then we tighten it with this finger screw, but not too much, because then it will crack the holder tube and it may come loose. Just until you feel that it's stuck, doesn't move. That's enough. We will now set up the SediMeter for logging. We assume you have installed the batteries and that it is reset. If it's not, you can reset it with the reset button, which you can see in there. We don't need the backlight in the sunlight. When you turn on the menu, you'll see the welcome Lindholm log data. And if we go to the right, you first see the net address, the RS485 ID that this has. You can change this if you have several instruments on the same network with the same address. For logging, this does not matter. We have the date, and by pressing down on the nav pin, you get the cursor. You can change to the date you have, and by going left, you can change the year and month also. To select, you press down again. Now we keep going right, get to the time menu, same thing, we can edit the hour, the minutes, the seconds, and press down to select. Interval, this is hour, minutes and seconds between measurements. We will here take 2 minutes. Next at, this is when the measurements will start. We had 16:08:51, so we'll have to put 16, what shall we take? 30 we can take. You can put this up to 24 hours in advance. It says store on flash. We do not have a memory card installed, but it can take a memory card, MMC or SD, up to 2 gigabytes. If we have a card installed, we can change this to store on card, but now it will not accept the card since we do not have it installed. Here is an option for erasing the flash memory. Mark it as read or erase it all. We will skip that for now. The same action for cards. The option here is to delete everything, delete all the folders and files in it. And then we have a number of optional samples. Since there are no optional sensors on this, we can leave that at 0. And the rate for the optional sensors, it doesn't matter here either. This is if we use the SediMeter as the master in a network. This option here allows us to copy the frequency, the number of samples, or both, to the slaves. So it's possible from the master to set up the optional sensor sampling in the slaves. This is also if it's a master in a network. By doing a roll call, it will probe each of the possible slaves and make a net list. And when it's the master in a network again, we can turn on the sleeping pill. That will cause the network in the slaves to turn off between measurements to save battery. Significantly lowers the battery use. Now we get to the important menu, the mode. Here, when we change this to logger, it will start the timing. The other options are slave, network slave, network master, and an adapter, USB to RS485 network adapter. So it's possible to use one instrument as the adapter connected to the computer with USB, and then through that access all the others in the network, even if they are far away. So we are going to set it up as a logger, standalone logger. Now when we did that, we got a new menu that wasn't here before, and that's this menu. It shows the time of next measurement on the first line and the present time on the second line. This menu was here before. It shows the temperature in degrees Celsius and the voltage. Essentially this is the battery voltage, 6.98 volts. The display pulls it down a little bit. It's over 7 if we turn off the display. And as you see, the temperature is high here because I'm holding it in the sun. And when I'm doing that, I might make another point. If you have the cylinder on, it gets even hotter inside. So don't leave it like this in the sun. It's made for be underwater, not in the sun. So now it's set up, and we can just wait for it to start. The only menus we can access now are this for the network, change the mode to turn it off, and we can watch the temperature, battery, and the time. So if we click on this one or this one on select, it turns off the display, and we can close it. And to close it, you push the spring down while holding the lid firmly in, and make sure that it ends up in the slot there where it should be. Now it's closed. To download data, open either the lid here, that's sufficient to be able to connect it, or remove the entire cylinder. If you're going to keep USB connected for an extended period of time, it is best to remove the batteries. The reason is that when USB is connected, they will drain the batteries faster if you keep them in. Now we will use power from the computer instead. We have now connected the USB and started the SediMeter program. You get first of all this SediMeter control window when you start SediMeter.exe. Here we select the COM port where the SediMeter is connected. In this case COM16, it's USB, and we click open connection. Now we can access the other tabs here. The setup tab for setting time, clock, start time, etc. Download for getting the memory, and then special for changing mode, and a monitoring tab that assists with real-time monitoring. We can check what the time is here, for instance. We see that it was a little bit wrong compared to the computer. But the reason we went here now was to download data. So we click the check memory button. It says we have a total of 4 records and there are no new records. If we want to download those, we can click here to select where to save the data. Type in a file name, dummy, and the default extension is SM2A. Now the file name shows up here. If we had any new data, we could click Get New, but now it's all old and red data, so Get All is the button to click if we want to download it. And once downloaded, it will show up in this file view window, where we can step through the records and see the raw data as it was downloaded. We close this, and if we now want to inspect the data, we click the Data Analyze Logged, and we get the window for inspecting recorded data. I close this again, and I want to clean the memory now, so I click Erase. It is now erasing the data, and the little hourglass there shows that it's working. Now it's done. You get a green light as a confirmation, and if we click Check, it says 000. Now the Setup tab, that's what you use before you go out starting to log data. We showed that before, how to do it on the display itself, on nav pin. It can also be done here, and you would set, let's say we have 1812 is the time, so let's say we start 1830, we have 5 minutes interval, and we want 0 optional data because we don't have an optional sensor. And then we click Set, and we can click Get to read the time back, and we see now that the difference in time is 0, so the instrument is set to the same time as the computer. Finally, we go to Special. We can click Get to see that the instrument is now in sleep, low power mode. And to start logging, we select Logger Standalone and click Set. And success remains green. It means it was received in the SediMeter. So now we are done. The memory is cleaned, empty. We've set up the time, the next, the interval, and we have switched to logger mode. So we can disconnect. We close the connection again, and we pull out the cable from the SediMeter, which is now ready to deploy. We will now look at setting it up for network logging. This can be done underwater. But first, we have to prepare it above the water. And as before, we turn on the menu. We set up the date, the time, the interval, the starting time. Now, we need a memory card, because to store on a network, we have to have a memory card. It will store one file for each instrument on the network. Here we have the memory card, and when we put that in, it will show card mounted and turn off the display. That's normal. So we go back to where we were. Store on card, it says. That's the default when we put it in. If we need to delete everything, we can do that now. So now we have deleted all the files on the card, and we continue. If we have optional sensors, we can set up here how many samples to take, up to a maximum of 84. And the frequency of the optional sensors, and here we can choose to set up the optional sensors in the slaves as well. Now here we get to net list. If we can connect this first and then set it up, then this is the appropriate time to do the roll call. However, if we are going to connect it underwater, we leave this for the time being. The sleeping pill we turn on to make the network go off power between measurements. And we need to have it in slave mode so the network is on when we close it. Now we are done so far. We turn it off and we close it. It's now prepared so it can be taken down below the water. This instrument does not have an underwater plug, but assume it is an instrument equipped with an underwater network plug. We could now take it down below the water, connect it to the rest of the instruments in the network, which should be set up like this one in slave mode. And then we use a magnet like this, approach it here on this side and watch the display. It turns on, and after a few seconds it switches to the mode display, and here we can go through all the modes, and the one we want is this one, network 2 SediMeter underwater. Now it's preparing the network, doing the roll call to check. It found 1, that's correct, and now it's preparing the files on the card, and now it's done. There was no error code, so it's done, it's ready, and the whole network will start recording data automatically. And if we want to check what's going on, we can again use the magnet to see that we have battery voltage in the system and which mode it is in.